Alrighty. What if you could get a little bit more done each day, which would lead into you getting more done each week and each month? What would that mean for your business, for your revenue, for your personal life? I think it would mean a lot. And we constantly hear from advisors that getting productivity is one of their number one challenges. So we have a special treat for you today on the Building a Better Advisory Business Show, brought to you by Horse's Mouth. We have practice management specialist, turned from financial advisor Teresa Riccobuono on. She's going to be talking with Sean Bailey, Horse's Mouth editor in chief, and she's going to be talking about her upcoming time management virtual workshop she's got coming up, but also giving some time management tips, and most importantly, answering your questions. So to help us kick things off, why don't, in whatever platform you're watching the show on, if you could just let us know what your number one time management struggle is, or what your number one question is for Teresa, and that'll go a long way to kicking us off here. So without further ado, I'll now hand things over to Sean and Teresa.
Series, How to Earn More, Better Serve Your Clients, and Work Smarter, Not Harder, where each week we're going to be on here talking with folks such as yourselves, from the front lines, or experts like Teresa, whatever the case may be. Any topic relating to building a better business will be our purview with this Thursday morning live stream. So Teresa Buono, welcome back.
Good morning, everybody.
So Teresa, you've created this amazing program called the Great Advisor Time Management Dividend Project. Regain control of your schedule, drive new profits, and finally enjoy your life and your business. Now, to me, that seems to be, a key thing is, look, for the most part, compared to lots of other professions, this is a great business. You work hard, your client base grows, the market goes up, everybody's doing well. And really, at some point, I've noticed in the more than 20 years I've been in this business that a lot of advisors, just as they start to succeed, also kind of feel like they're slipping away from having control of their business and their life. And I think that's one of the things that really attracted me to this topic, was to find a way so that we could, help show a better path for, more balance, so that people can have a successful business and have a successful life. So Teresa, just to get going, what, in your view, what are the common mistakes that you see advisors making when it comes to managing their time?
Well, one of the chats came up, interruptions is a big one. And we talk about that in the workshop, and we come up with some solutions, but the broad answer is interruptions is one. You also hinted at, maybe more than hinted at, the business beginning to take control of our lives. And the reality is the business is supposed to be supporting what we're trying to achieve in our personal lives. And at some point, there's a switch, a time where that changes, where the business is no longer supporting our personal life, but actually more in control, where we're spending an inordinate amount of time thinking about the business, working in the business, fretting about the business, maybe waking up in the middle of the night wondering what did get done, or did something specific that popped into your mind, did that get done or not? And that can be very wearing or draining on people.
Right. Yeah. Also, you've made some interesting observations about people not even thinking that time management is in fact, a strategic, frankly, an imperative if you want to really grow your business. Can you speak to that a little more?
Yeah. So with this business, and I would say with other businesses, but I think more so in this business, we our time commitments are fewer. And I'll just say, for instance, if you ran a dry cleaning company, you have to be open for business at a certain time. You have to stay open until the close of business, your stated hours of operation. And in between, you have lots of things to get done, to make sure that, people's clothes are ready. So there's all of these time commitments. In our business, outside of client and prospect meetings, we really have free reign to do whatever we want. Really. Do we prepare for the client meeting 10 minutes before the clients come in? Or do we prepare for the client meeting the week before? Right? Those are all decisions that as business owners, we get to make. And because of the fluidity and the lack of deadlines for many of these things that we're required to do to run our business effectively, if we're not in the mood, if we don't feel like it, something else maybe more interesting comes up, that can really skew our decision making about the things that we really probably should be focusing on. And one of the things that we talk about, and to an advisor that I've had this conversation with, will say, yes, that's happened to me. If you don't prepare for a client review meeting, for example, well in advance of that appointment time, you may lose an opportunity or overlook a strategy that might be valuable for that client. And your subconscious will work on the case. So if you give a relatively short time period between your prepping and the client meeting, your subconscious is still going to be working on that case even after that client meeting has occurred. And you may have a flash of brilliance about that client situation, but it may be too late to have that conversation and maybe implement that strategy because you didn't give your subconscious enough time to work on the case in advance of actually meeting with the client. And I'll bet there's a few people who are listening today that have experienced that, or maybe that flash of brilliance about the case came after the client meeting.
Yeah, I also wonder on the client preparation front, just first to acknowledge when it comes to delivering value to clients and reinforcing your connection with the clients and the value you deliver, those quarterly or twice yearly or yearly, whatever schedule, you have a particular client on, those meetings, really, that's really critical stuff for advisors. What is your sense of the degree to which advisors, everybody's different, of course, but what is your sense of what percent of client meetings are done with less than optimal pre-meeting preparation?
Well, you're right. Everybody is different. I have some advisors who take great care and thoroughness for those client meetings. And there are others, usually they're ones who are new to starting to work with me, because I do believe this is a very important aspect of your client service as well as business development. But I do have some advisors who are really shortchanging their clients. And in my perspective, right, we all have our own philosophies, but my philosophy is it's our job to do the best work we can for our clients. And a big part of that is making sure that we're doing thorough meeting prep, doing that meeting prep well in advance, again, so our subconscious can continue to work on it. And it's also business development because in the eyes of our clients, we're referable. And if you don't think that your clients don't know the difference, you're wrong.
Yeah, you're fooling yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with advisors to improve their meeting prep and delivery of that content, and have had their clients say, wow, this was a really effective meeting, or gosh, we covered so much today, or I received a lot of value from today's meeting, you know, some version of that.
Right.
And not every client says that, of course, when you make the switch, but you know that if there's one or two clients saying that, there's probably a number of clients who are thinking that and just not saying anything to you.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's it again, that's really critical. The client meeting is showtime. You know, that's when you suit up and, you know, deliver, you know, you're obviously always putting your best foot forward, of course. So,
Right. Well, and I would take it one step further, just thinking about my interactions with my clients. Every time I interact with one of my clients who are financial advisors, they are making a decision whether to, you know, continue hiring me or not. And your clients are in the same position. They may be a little bit stickier because they have, you know, accounts invested with you, or insurance policies, or whatever it may be, financial planning. But each time you interact with them, in the back of their mind, there's that decision. Is this a relationship that I want to continue with? Do I feel like I'm being valued in this relationship?
right, right. The other question I wanted you to, or the other point I wanted you to speak to, has to do with, you know, something that is really one of the first major tasks of everybody who joins your Great Advisor, you know, time management dividend project. And that is this idea of conducting for a short period of time your own time usage study. And I think one of the mistakes, you can elaborate on this, is that, you know, because advisors aren't thinking about the strategic imperatives embedded in being smarter and more efficient with their time, because they don't think about that, then they've not also ever taken the time to engage in some sort of exercise that it objectively analyzes how they're actually spending their time. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So if you're unhappy with something in your life, and today we're talking about time and activity management, the first step is to figure out where you're at today, to do a diagnosis of how your time is being spent. And as you know, Sean, one of my advisors used the adjective illuminating after he and his team went through a time tracking exercise for a short period of time. And we don't realize until we're tracking it how we are actually spending our time. And I think it goes back to with eating and dieting. When you have to write down what you're eating, it becomes glaringly clear what you might want to change. And so I think that diagnosis is a very important part of the overall process of figuring out how we should spend our time better, is knowing how we're spending our time currently. And you have a great exercise that you went through that was very simple. And I think the listeners would appreciate hearing your experience.
Yeah, well, as we were meeting earlier this year, a little bit, very late last year, and starting to discuss how to create this program, I engaged in my own, sort of time usage analysis. And it was very illuminating. And it was also very simple. I just took my iPhone, which goes with me everywhere, and at the start of the day, had it scheduled to ding every 30 minutes. And so the alarm on the clock would just go off every 30 minutes, and then I would immediately reset it. But as I was doing that, I would take note of, all right, what project am I working on now? What am I doing right at this moment? And then I would open up the notes feature in my iPhone, and just, I had a file there for the study. And so I would note, 10:30, doing live stream with Teresa Riccobuono. And then 30 minutes later, it would say maybe finish live stream. And then 30 minutes after that, it would say working on new long-term care marketing project. And, that's what you do. You just go through your day, but you stop just for a few seconds as your clock goes off, and you're capturing this data, and it begins to, show you, as you do that for a week, you can see, well, Teresa, what do people discover when they do that?
A number of things. One is that you may find out that two different people on your team are doing the same work. I thought you were I thought I was supposed to be doing that. Well, I thought I was supposed to be doing that. So that comes up. Or the alternative, you find out that something isn't getting done. I thought you were supposed to be doing that. Well, I thought you were supposed to be doing that. In the example that I shared yesterday, what this advisor team discovered was that one client was spending an inordinate amount of time with different team members, and what the client would do would contact a different member on the team so they weren't seeming like a burden to any one person. And I encourage this, when they did their time tracking, not only did they write down the activity that they were doing, but if they were working on a client case, financial planning or meeting prep or solving a client issue, they would write the client name down as well. And so it became very obvious that this client, who they thought was a profitable client, really ended up being an unprofitable client because of the amount of time that client was spending with the different members of the team. And that would have never come to light other than this time tracking exercise, because again, no one person on the team felt like this client was being burdensome.
Yeah, right. Okay, we got some questions and some comments we're going to dive into, but let me just throw something else out there for our audience that's listening live. And we just want to hear from you relating to, which one of these mistakes that Teresa has touched upon, connect with you or you struggle with. But Doug, we've got a few things here. You want to kind of toss these out to Teresa to get her comments?
Yeah, sure. So Bill said prioritizing between urgent and important.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is having a model week. And when you're developing your model week, and I help advisors go through this, whether it's a coaching client or through this program that's starting next week, it's already next week it's starting, is to develop a model week. And when we develop that model week, we discuss what are the important things that need to be accomplished. And we make sure that there's dedicated time on the model week to get those things done. And when you remain focused on the important things, less things become urgent because we have dedicated time to take care of business. There will always be client emergencies or a technology glitch or something like that, but those tend to be few and far between. And if we've got a good plan and a client emergency comes up and throws us off of our plan, once we've dealt with that emergency, we have a plan to go back to.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because it recognizes that there will always be some flow of things coming into you in your office that are couched as being urgent, that you'll have, and that if you don't acknowledge that as being part of the reality and don't have a thought out approach to how you're really going to react to these kinds of inquiries, you're forever being knocked off your horse and trying to get back on, as opposed to having a framework that you and your team can use to look at these inquiries and really both know, which ones are genuinely urgent versus important, but we can get to later. While me, the advisor, stays head down doing something, or that you recognize that in some cases you have to veer from what it was you were doing and actually respond to this thing, but you have a strategy specifically thought out about how to get back on track, as opposed to just like, working your way through the urgent matter and then finally getting back to your desk and like, hey, now where was I? What was I doing? Instead, you have a framework knowing. Maybe you can speak a little more to that, Teresa.
Yeah. So, for instance, in the model week, I will usually, almost always, depending on the situation, of course, but almost always have space dedicated to call clients back. And you may remember me saying yesterday that when we were talking about interruptions, that when a client is contacting your office with a request, they don't expect that you will drop everything and handle that request right then and there. They are contacting your office at that time because it is a convenient time in their day to contact your office and put in that request. So for instance, if they're calling at 10 a.m. on Thursday morning saying, hey, I need to get some information from you, or can you research this or whatever, the request is, you can say, you know what, I'm stepping in, I've got meetings, back-to-back meetings the rest of the day. I have time Friday morning to look into this and get back to you. And that way it doesn't pull you off of what you have planned, but also you have time set aside to get back to that client.
Right. I think, some advisor firms have a rule that they want the phone answered within a few rings. And I totally understand that and think that's great. But that it carries on beyond that. It's like, okay, now we've answered your phone call before the third ring. Now we have to solve your problem, within 5 minutes. And that is, I think those two things need to be separated.
Absolutely. And you will know if it's an emergency, if, for instance, a wire transfer needs to be done because somebody's buying a house, right? That's always time sensitive. Right. A client calls because their spouse passed away. You're not going to say, hey, can we talk about this Friday morning, right? Nope. So there are certain things that you do have to drop, everything else and take care of that. But again, that doesn't happen every day or every week. We have self-imposed upon us this need to solve that problem right away. And the reality is, you have the choice of solving it right away if you want to, but we can also put a plan in place where your schedule allows you to handle those situations without it throwing off your plan for the day.
Yeah, right. Doug, I see that Kate Marvel has said something about this issue of prepping for meetings, which I think we should come back to because it is so important.
Yeah, so Kate said, educating clients on the amount of time we spend preparing for their meetings and why they're sending copies of their statements, tax returns, etc. the day before isn't effective.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that actually goes to the pre-meeting prep. So I put together something with one of my advisors years ago because of this very issue. And we called it the 3-week in advance email confirmation, which basically says to the effect, hey, Sean, we've got a meeting coming up on September 27th at 9 a.m. We're already starting to prepare for that meeting. Please let us know if there's anything that you would like us to review or research so that we can do that during this time and be able to discuss it during our meeting. So that helps you not have follow-up, and I'll get to what we're talking about too, but I think this is important. Advisors hate follow-up, right? It doesn't have a deadline. So we've prepped however we're going to prep, whether it's, very quickly or very thoroughly for that meeting, because that meeting's going to happen at 10 a.m. today, right? But whatever comes out of that meeting generally doesn't have a deadline. And that's where advisors falter, is these tasks that don't have deadlines. So if we can eliminate some of the follow-up, we're happier. Right. So if we are asking in advance, if there's anything that you would like us to review or research, please get that to us so we can prepare in advance and be able to discuss it during our meeting.
Right.
So that's one thing. But doing that, so going back to sort of the inquiry that just came up. So for us to prepare well in advance, that allows us to not only ask if there's anything that they would like us to research or review, but to also say, for our upcoming meeting, these are the things that we will need from you so that we can make our time together most effective. And you will have some clients who follow suit and get you the information in a timely manner. And there will always be those that you have to chase all the way up to the 11th hour. But if we start the process earlier ourselves, then we're giving that heads up and getting that request in early to our clients as well.
Yeah, I just want to say something on that issue of, continuing the process to the 11th hour. I know a number of very successful advisors who are successful in terms of bringing on new clients who really put a lot of time into that first meeting with the prospect, including, analyzing their statements and their tax returns, and maybe if it's like coming out of a Social Security event, looking at their PIA to start to determine, when the client or clients may think about claiming for Social Security. But I know a number of advisors who ask for these documents will simply say, listen, if we don't have them 7 days in advance or 3 days in advance, we're simply going to have to reschedule the meeting because the meeting won't be effective. We can't deliver on our promise to you if we don't have the time to analyze this stuff. And so they require, discussing it literally as they close their, webinar or seminar presentation, like, all right, I want to invite you in for this complimentary meeting, but in order for it to be an effective use of your time and for me to deliver on the things we've discussed that we'll cover, we need you to send this stuff in advance because I have a power planner or a planner on the staff who's going to spend a lot of time looking at this, and we'll go over it in the meeting. And then again, simply say to them, if we can't get it in time, we'll have to reschedule. And even doing that actually also acts as a filter, because prospects who might think come into this free meeting, kind of kick the tires a little bit. Well, if they're not really serious about possibly engaging you as their new advisor, if they're not serious about it, they're not going to go to the trouble of, getting the copies of their statements and tax returns and PIA and everything to you in advance. So in a way, it acts as a filter. No one's, wasting time in a kick the tire type of meeting there.
Absolutely. And I would take that one step further. I actually wrote an article, something to the effect of, if only clients came with an instruction manual. And it really talks about the fact that prospects and clients really don't know what to expect when they're going to be working with an advisor. They know what's going to happen when they go to the doctor or the dentist, but they don't necessarily know what this relationship is supposed to look like with a financial advisor. And so at the prospect stage, having a conversation about expectations. If you become a client, this is what you can expect of me and my team, but also we ask some things of you. And it could be a whole laundry list of things. And of course, one of those things is when we ask for information, please provide it in a timely manner. And if you have that discussion before they even become a client, they've agreed to basically those rules of engagement. So if later on down the line, the client, I'm doing air quotes for those who are listening but can't see, before they become a client, they're basically agreeing. And then if they misbehave at a later date, it's easier for you to go back and have the conversation about, hey, remember when we first, talked about engaging together in this relationship? And, I told you what you can expect of me and my team. And I hope that we have, kept our commitments. And there were some things that you agreed to as well. And generally things have been great. However, I want to talk about this one particular topic.
Yeah.
And that's easier to have that conversation when you have had the discussion before they even became a client. You can still have that conversation later on if you didn't have that conversation in the beginning of the relationship, but it's easier because you can go back and say, hey, you agreed to this. And so, let's talk about what's going on, because this is really starting to become a problem.
Right. Yeah. In our recent financial educator webinar coaching program, we've had 2 sessions of that program since January. And a number of times in the last 9 months, there's been some interesting conversations about that setting of expectations with the prospect, and this is kind of slightly off topic, but I just wanted to touch on it for a second because I was curious with your private coaching groups, whether you've ever come up with it. But it's this thing about, one of the comments down below is getting at balancing current client engagement with proactively trying to obtain new prospects. And what I'm speaking about here is the balance in the first meeting with a prospect, where you obviously want to get a lot of information from them, but it is also important for you to spend some time talking about yourself and your business, and setting expectations about what it's like to work with you. But there's been some interesting things that have come out. Some people have given that quite a lot of thought and have very much of a set piece that they do with their prospects, discussing themselves, the advisor, and their firm, and how they got to this place in life, and so on and so forth, without going on so long that it becomes too much about the advisor. But curious to know, Teresa, whether that's something you've spent some time working on with advisors on.
I would say yes, to a certain extent. I mean, not every advisor has this as kind of a stressor for them. And maybe they've, figured out their own thing, but absolutely. And we can even talk about it during the workshop. Right. But, again, every situation is a little bit different. And I think that's why advisors like working with me, is because I don't have a box that I'm trying to fit the advisor in. I'm trying to create an individual box for each advisor, the way they want to run their business.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's also part of storytelling, and the storytelling is because people remember stories, you communicate better with stories. So the advisor ought to have a good, tight, yet meaningful story that they tell about themselves that connects them to the business, and even connects them to literally sitting across from the prospect. Why is this so important? Why is this part of their professional life?
One of the things that I encourage my advisors to do is to create an introductory packet that either they can send out, or a center of influence can hand out or send out, that allows for great connectivity, whether it's the bio, the menu of services, what to expect, and how to prepare for your first meeting. All part of that packet. So even before you're having a meeting with the prospect, you've given them some great information that they can learn about you, your team, how you work, and whatnot. And that really is sort of that conversation that you're talking about, that we've really crafted it into an introductory packet.
Yeah.
And so the messaging would be consistent.
Yep. Good. So let's move on to the second part of our Q&A segment here, Teresa. And that has to do with, so what can you say about the types of benefits advisors enjoy when they do, in fact, take up your call to become more strategic in their time management, or as you end up calling it, their activity management?
Yeah. I think the overarching benefit that I hear from advisors is moving from running their business reactively to running their business proactively, where they feel more in control of what's happening versus feeling like they're running from one fire to the next. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's an evolution. But I have had advisors tell me that going through this process and getting to that point of feeling like they are proactively running their business has really been a godsend to them. They have renewed rejuvenation for the business. They're liking what they're doing instead of feeling burnt out and like, oh my gosh, how much longer can I do this? They're feeling like, oh, this is great. I love this again. And
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest benefit. So if anybody's feeling like, oh my gosh, how much longer can I do this? They really need to think about the program, or some program, hopefully our program.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I know you've seen this, and I've certainly seen it. This is a great business to be in, and plenty of people out there would totally agree with this, and they've been enjoying it. And the years are moving on, the decades are even moving on, and you can get to feel a little stale along the way and a little burned out. And when we talk with Lynn O'Shaughnessy in her workshop about creating a niche to pursue, in her case, pursuing the niche of, helping clients figure out how to pay for college, that a niche strategy oftentimes becomes something very valuable and re-energizing to advisors. Mm-hmm. For one thing, when you have a niche, as it relates to time management, if you were going to have a client meeting and suddenly, the 90 minutes on your calendar is canceled because something came up in the client's family and they can't make the meeting, you've got 90 minutes open in front of you. Oh my, what do I do with the 90 minutes? Do I get on Facebook and just burn it all up? Or when you have a niche, boom, now I got 90 minutes, back to the niche, there's all sorts of specific activities and thinking and development of that niche, cultivating it, that's always required. And so we know that advisors who have niches perform better than generalist advisors. And we also know that they don't often say they have time management problems, because they're always actually, really any spare time goes into that niche. There's something for them to do there.
Good point.
So, let's talk a little bit about some of the specifics of your program and how you have organized it, Teresa. So one of the things is that in the first session, which actually starts September 14th, when is that? Next Tuesday?
Yes, it is.
All right. Plenty of time for people to still get in there. They're going to learn about, the first session's devoted to this time tracking. We've discussed it before, but do you want to just talk a little bit about what is the main exercise that people are going to be conducting
Yes.
coming out of that session?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One is we have a time wasters document, a list of imposed upon us time wasters and a list of self-imposed time wasters. And really that's sort of just an overall analysis, like where do you see maybe some of your time being swallowed up inefficiently or unnecessarily. And so that's kind of step one. And then we do go into the diagnosis, the time tracking exercise. I have a few advisors I've heard of or heard from that have continued to do the time tracking, and they've done it for forever, it seems like. It's just part of how they run their day or how their team runs their day. But for our exercise, and Sean, I think you even said you got some valuable information just from doing it a week.
Right.
And I would say, 2 weeks to a month, maybe, if that works. Because the first week
yeah, sure. Right.
you're sort of getting into the habit of even, thinking about what you're doing and writing it down. You had that chime, so you had that alert to remind you. But if you don't set that alarm, maybe you have just a time tracker on your computer, or you have the old-fashioned time tracker that I share, which is just really, paper and pencil with a template. The first week is really just getting used to doing it.
Right.
So there's oftentimes a lot of gaps in the information. So that second week becomes more of a habit. And then again, if you have another week or two after that, it's great. So the diagnosis is super important, because if we're going to improve, we need to know where we're at currently. And we think we're right, or we're honest. If we were just to think about how we spend our time, how much time we spend here or there. But when you see it in black and white, again, that adjective of illuminating comes up a lot.
Right. And so also that's why we have 2 weeks built between these sessions, so that people can get out there and implement the things that they're learning and the activities that they're charged with conducting as part of the program. And so the second session, which comes 2 weeks later, September 28th, it's about the model week.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything, specifically you want to say about that?
Well, we touched on that quite a bit. So again, I'm a huge proponent of having some sort of plan for the week, and then to work the plan. The first draft of the model week will be a good first draft, but as you start working that plan, you'll realize that you have forgotten to put something in the week, or something that you thought took an hour really takes 90 minutes. Or what I often see is that you run out of week before you run out of things to put on your week. And then that comes the discussion of, are you the person on the team who should be doing this? Is there anybody on the team who can do it? Do I need to add some staff hours? Is it something that needs to be done at all? Or is it just the fact that we've always done it, and so we keep doing it? And the reality is, once we sit down and think about it, it's not something that even needs to be done anymore. Or it can be turned over to technology. So a human isn't running the show, but maybe monitoring versus, taking as much time. Yeah. And again, turning that over to technology. So anyhow, the model week, big proponent. Again, It's not a box that I create. It's a box that we create for you and your particular situation.
And of course, the model week goes to the next topic, which you address in session 3 on October 12th, the creation of a master calendar and fine tune your new work style. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so at that point, we have created the model week and we've worked it a little bit. And so we're going to fine tune it. But the other thing, the master calendar is a plan for things that you need to do, and you or your team for the firm, that happen less frequently than daily or weekly. So the model week is for things that happen daily, weekly. The master calendar is for things that happen monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually.
Right.
And it's making sure that the important things that you need to do to run your business aren't overlooked, because again, we have that plan, it's charted out, and we actually have time in the model week to do master calendar activities. So we have not only the time to do it, but also the reminder to do it. So those important but often overlooked tasks are really front and center for you.
Right, right. And so the fourth session on October 26th is kind of an open classroom, because at this point, people have been, they've conducted their time tracking. They've started working on their model week. They've started working on their master calendar. And so you create session 4 as a way for people to, you kind of have it as sort of an open coaching session, so people can come in and share their insights, bring their problems, pick your brain, so on and so forth. And then after that session, you get to session 5, the final one, on November 9th called Keeping the Time Dividends Coming, How to Overcome New Challenges and Ensure Continued Success.
Right. Well, first of all, I want to go back to the open session, because a lot of the participants in our last workshop felt that that was very valuable, not only to get their questions answered, but to hear what other people's struggles were or what other people's solutions were. And so that was actually very valuable. We weren't sure how that was going to go, but from the feedback, certainly wanted to make sure that we kept that in. It also gives people a chance to catch up if they got a little bit behind, because they have that break. We're not giving them anything new to do. We're just continuing to work on the stuff that we've already discussed. The last session includes a couple of things. One is making sure that everybody feels good about where they're at, and if not, like how to get there. We talk about creating a model week for other people on the team, in conjunction or in coordination with the advisors. And then we also talk about an audit. So once we put these things in place, it's not that we never look at them again. Like between now and the end of your career, it's not going to stay as it is today. So we talk about how to work through the changes that will arise and how to make adjustments accordingly and how to audit the things that we've put in place.
Yeah, right. Good. I see that Kate Marvel on Facebook has said, I spend 3 weeks doing client meetings and then 1 week working on my practice. That way I'm not trying to shoehorn in all of the practice management tasks. I want to hear your comments on that, Teresa, but first I just wanted to say that Devin Kropp and I are working on a new marketing program that we're calling, the 4-hour marketing magic or something like that. We're still working on that aspect of it. But the idea is that if you devote like 4 hours a week to marketing activities, marketing communication, marketing communication activities for the most part, that still leaves you a huge amount of time for the rest of your, business related client meeting stuff. So I'm curious, Kate, maybe you can respond. When you say you're spending 3 weeks of doing client meetings and then 1 week on practice management, so are you not doing any sort of marketing and communications work yourself during those 3 weeks and segregating it all into that 4th week? And I'm sure that's a way to do it as well. I'm just kind of curious. But Teresa, what are your thoughts on what Kate has to say there?
Yeah, my philosophy is whatever works for you. Right. Again, I'm not trying to fit you in a box. I have worked with advisors over my 20+ year career, and I've got lots of examples of what's worked, and I like to share those. But again, trying to figure out what's going to work best. I have an advisor who does surge meetings basically 2 months out of the year in February and October. And his wife really hates him during those months because it's like everything is in there, but then it allows him the rest of the year to handle service issues, work on the business. He's in partnership with another advisor, so they do partner things. They have a company that they're very involved with, and they go visit the different plants.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe, though, what you mean by surge meetings?
All of his client service meetings are in February and October. So he has a few outliers that he meets with 3 times a year, but the bulk of his clients are twice a year, and he meets with them in February and October. Yeah. And then he doesn't really do client service meetings the rest of the year.
Right.
Like I said, there's a few that sprinkle in, but really that's the bulk of it. And so he is solely focused on preparing for, conducting, and the follow-up needs of those clients during February and October.
Yeah, I met an advisor down at our Savvy Tax Planning Workshop in Atlanta back in February, right before the pandemic kicked in. He spends his time between Oklahoma and Florida. And he had just finished holding his annual meeting. I guess he has his clients in 2 or 3 different investment portfolios. And so he literally has like a town hall meeting with all his clients simultaneously. Delivers at least the sort of, the investment review of the investment piece at a sort of mid-tier level, I guess. And he does it for everybody all at the same time. I thought that was very interesting. We need to loop back to him and get a little more detailed on how he pulls that off. I'm sure he must have other meetings one-on-one. And of course, there's always the client service issues. But we hear from Kate Marvel. Kate says, I do try to segregate into the 4th week. Mondays are prep. Tuesdays through Friday are 5 meetings a day at 10, 11:30, 1, 2:30, and 4. And then the 4th week, I work on our investment models, education, client communications, etc. My practice is pretty full, so I only work on referral, and I don't have to spend time on marketing. Well, good for you, Kate. And see that you've got a nice little system there. Teresa, your thoughts on Kate's approach there?
Hey, again, if it works for her, I know that not all advisors can do 5 appointments in a day. I have 2 advisors who only want to do 1 appointment a day.
Yeah, I hope there's somebody at home waiting for Kate to hand her a glass of wine as she comes.
There you go.
But the truth of the matter is, they used to say the difference between Bill Clinton and Al Gore was that they, would both be at an event and work the room all night. And at the end of the night, Bill Clinton was just on fire and totally energized. And Al Gore was, totally wiped out. And, and the reason is because they're just different types of people. They're just wired in different ways. So I would bet that Kate is wired, but happily receiving that glass of wine. She says there is somebody waiting at the door for her.
Well, the other thing is to have a team who can help with the prep and the follow-up, right? Yeah. So if you don't have the right team or enough staff hours to help you with that, then 5 meetings a day would be exhausting. And again, like you said, Sean, some people are energized by the client meetings and some people feel drained. And not drained because they just hate to do them, but drained because really the client meeting is a performance. And so there's that adrenaline surge that comes from being on stage and performing during those client meetings. And some people can come off of that, catch their breath, and then go on, to the second act and do it again. And some people are drained and they just can't recuperate and know that they need to, have that designated recuperation time.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming to the top of the hour, so I just want to invite everybody to, take advantage of this amazing opportunity that Teresa has created with her time management dividend project workshop. It does start next Tuesday. And if you go to horsesmouth.com/time, that simple word, /time after the .com, that'll roll you right over to the page where you can see everything that's in the program and learn how to sign up for it and be there for the first class on Tuesday. And of course, they're always recorded as well. So if you have some scheduling issues, that's never a problem. And you also have the opportunity to see a webinar that Teresa just put on yesterday afternoon, in fact, called 4 Time Management Mistakes That Crush Your Productivity, Profitability, and Lifestyle. And if you just go to horsesmouth.com/crush, that's right, crush, like that delicious orange soda we drank when we were kids, you'll land on the webinar page and you'll be able to see the webinar. So everybody, thanks so much for being here, and hope to see you next week at this time when we continue with our Building a Better Business series. Meanwhile, good luck. Have a great day. Have a good weekend. Take care.